I'm your gameplay commentator from GameBase, and I just wanted to go ahead and I want to try to beat the first boss of Elden Ring, basically as fast as I can. I went ahead and I started the game as a samurai, and the reason that I did that is just because the samurai gets an uchi katana. That's pretty much the only reason. Starting classes in Elden Ring are important because they choose what you start the game with, but they're not important as you progress through the game. Once you can level up, you can just change your stats to be essentially whatever you want, and you can get all of the equipment that you start with. You can get at least one copy of it throughout the game. It's really difficult to get two uchi katanas unless you start as a samurai, so that's useful if you're into that sort of thing. But if you don't plan on using two uchi katanas, which you honestly probably won't, then there's no really strong reason to do exactly the starting class. The reason that I am doing it, though, is because it's a little bit of a pain to get the first one, and I simply just want to do this quickly. It's a thing that you can do very, very quickly from the start of the game if you start as any other class. It's actually easier to do this with most other classes, but you can't do it quite as directly. The reason that I like the uchi katana is because it does bleed, and it means that I technically don't have to upgrade my weapon, or do basically anything at all, in order to get to the first boss. And I think that's super neat, so I want to show it off. We're pretty much going to run straight there, and we're going to whack him. Normally when you're playing through this game, you want to do a little bit more than just run straight to the first boss and start whacking him and seeing what happens. You want to go ahead and you want to level up, and you want to get some better equipment, upgrade the equipment that you have, and that'll make the game a lot easier. That said, you don't need to. If you're good at the game, if you're good at dodging, if you understand your tools, if you have a highly upgraded weapon, then you often get to ignore a bunch of the other stuff. I think that that's one of the things that makes this game very neat. I think that that's one of the things that makes Souls games in general very neat. Souls games like Dark Souls or Bloodborne kind of tend to be compared to Metroidvanias, which is a way of saying that they're non-linear games, big open-world non-linear games with tools that are scattered throughout the world. And as you pick up tools, you gain different ways of taking on different challenges. Now in a game like Castlevania, the tools might be literally necessary for you to climb up a wall, whereas in a game like Elden Ring, you might have to get keys to get from one zone to another, which could change your routing, but more importantly, there are things like different weapons, different armor sets, different spells scattered throughout the world. So I think it's super neat that the order in which you choose to explore things can have a big impact on how the game feels and how you play your character. Again, as I sort of obliquely mentioned earlier, one of the things that's super cool in terms of difficulty is that you have the ability to sort of set your own difficulty with regards to how much grinding you do, how you choose to play, how highly you upgrade your equipment, and even what equipment you choose to use. If you want, you can play a character with heavy armor and a shield, and that can be cool, but that'll change how you have to approach fights. Because with heavy armor and a shield, you'll take a little bit less damage, you'll be able to put your shield up, and it means that in exchange for doing less and potentially having shorter punish windows and killing your entire stamina bar, there's a cutscene here, it'll be harder for you to die to attacks that you haven't seen. On the flip side, if you choose to use really light armor, you'll move faster, and you'll have to be a lot more precise with your dodges, but you might have bigger punish windows sometimes. I'm going to get a horse. Okay, now that I have this horse, I'm going to put the horse on my item wheel. This is a super important thing that the game sort of tells you but doesn't really tell you, and that is that you have an item pouch and you can put up to 6 items in it, and you can use these at any time just immediately via hotkey. I think it's really cool to do this for your horse. I think also it's cool to do this for your summons, which you'll see me do in about 2 seconds. I would encourage you to play the game for yourself and read through these if you're interested in this sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to add these wolves that I can summon to my summon wheel, and we're all set. This is actually all the prep we're going to do. We're going to do one more thing. All the prep we're going to do one more thing, of course. We are going to do one more very, very small thing. Well, 2 more, I guess, but we're mostly done. We're mostly there. I tried to say there and done at the same time. Okay, so we're going to mostly follow the road to the northwest, and that'll take us to the first boss. The first boss is Margit The Fell Omen, who definitely is not... I don't know how many spoilers I want to give. I don't know how much of his life story I want to go into this video. But Margit The Fell Omen is a spooky gentleman. He's got a sword that looks kind of like a tree branch. He's got a glowing hammer, and he's got glowing daggers that he throws at you. Margit is one of several bosses in this game, and by several bosses I mean most of them, and most enemies, that play a fun game that I like to call For Flinching, which is to say that he'll frequently raise his weapon really big above his head, and he'll be like, haha, I'm going to swing it at you. And he'll be like, gosh, I'm rolling. And then he'll just keep raising his weapon, and then 2 seconds later he'll come crashing down on your head. This makes it very difficult, even if you're experienced at Souls games, to fight most bosses the first time, because you simply don't know which attacks they're playing For Flinching on, and how hard they're playing For Flinching. Some of the bosses, especially Margit, you can attack several times while he's got his sword raised above his head, and then you can roll, and you'll have time, and sometimes you'll even still roll early, because he plays it that hard. Most other bosses in the game aren't quite as extreme, though. Okay, so we went ahead and we picked up a seed from that glowing tree that you saw back there, and we're going to use that seed to give ourselves another flask. We're going to do that in 1 second. Before we do that, I'm actually going to die inside the boss room. I'm doing this for a very simple reason. I want the boss to spawn far away from me. You can see that when I go in here the first time, there's a little cutscene, and there's no boss fuck. I just walk into a cutscene, and I find that very frustrating. This is one of the other things in the game that makes bosses very difficult the first time you attack them, because you spawn in a completely different place, and the boss tends to spawn right on top of you. Every other time you approach the boss, you'll go through this little golden fog wall that you can see right here, and the boss will be far away from you. So I want that to happen to me this time. Okay, she's going to talk to me, and she's going to offer me the ability to go to round table hold. And this is a super useful thing that you'll definitely want to do basically as soon as you can. There's no reason to not go now. It's a cool place that you can explore. You can talk to people. But I don't want to go there now, simply because I don't want to deal with the load screens there and back, and because I don't have any souls, so there's nothing for me to do there. Our preparation is now complete, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to touch the summon sign. I'm going to summon Sorcerer Rajier, and I'm going to wait a little bit so that he pops up. Summons take some time before they actually appear in your world. He's going to just gradually come out of this sign. Zoom. And then if you're summoning a player, you want to wait a little bit longer than that too. And then I'm going to make some doggies. And I'm just going to be as aggressive as I can on this gentleman, Margit The Fell Omen. Oops. Wow. Okay. I'm going to be as aggressive as I can. Right there what happened was Sorcerer Rajier was right behind me. And I'm just going to whack him. See? 2 for flinching. And I rolled off the edge of the cliff. But it's okay. I'm going to try one more time. Once I decide to hit the kill floor. The thing that is the most difficult about this strategy is that you and the dogs and Rajier are sort of all in a small circle around the boss, and it can be very difficult to dodge under those circumstances. Even if you know exactly what's happening and you have the dodge timing, which I am not insinuating that I did that entire time, but even if you do have it, it can get kind of tricky. So I'm going to wait a little bit for him to appear. I can try to remember that this is jump, and that the other button is not. And I'm going to summon the dogs again. Just going to go straight through the fog gate and summon them. And you can see that now I can summon the dogs immediately. Jumping heavy attacks are your friend in this, because jumping heavy attacks do a lot of stance damage. So he's on me, so I'm just gonna back off. When he gets stance broken like that, I'm actually gonna do only heavy attacks. I'm not gonna do light attacks because I don't want the cutscene. And I'm just gonna go ahead and top myself off because you're doing quite well on his health bar. We're gonna roll through that, and then completely miss him. Get absolutely no punish at all. I'm gonna go ahead and flask up so that he doesn't throw things at me. Oh my gosh. So 8-2 for flinching. Almost had time to finish that flask. Okay. The trick here is really just being as aggressive as you can early. You can see the again, 2 for flinching. 2 for flinching. We're going to try this one more time. I actually did a couple of practice runs before I recorded this video, and I was getting it 100% of the time in practice. This is the curse. The curse of recording. What I need to be doing is I need to be being a little bit more aggressive early, and I need to be wasting a little bit less of the health of all of these guys that I'm summoning. I'm going to be impatient, and I just need to be way more aggressive when he's attacking things that aren't me. I'm going to drag him out a little bit. I want to try to make a sandwich so that Rogier and the wolves are on one side of him and I'm on the other. Get some health in, or attacks in. Whee! Because this is very much as I'm playing in a battle of attrition. It's actually kind of bad that Rogier is this far away from us. One of the other things that you'll notice in this game, especially if you do a lot of co-op, is that bosses don't necessarily need to be facing you to do damage to you, right? So no matter how certain I am that he's attacking Sorcerer Rogier instead of me, he still can do damage to me. Oops. And this run might be a bust. Because I'm out of dogs. Again, when he's on the ground like this, I want to only use strong attacks, because at this point in the game, me doing the big cinematic light attack is just not very helpful. You can see the big delay between that attack and when it actually comes off. I didn't trust that was actually on Rogier. This is on me. Hey, I actually dodged it. Let's go. Rogier is doing the big cinematic attack. You get off stance breaks, and we got him. Cool. Now again, that didn't go perfectly. I definitely screwed up a little bit. But this is no upgrades, no levels, no anything. And while there was some amount of dodging, I also am really bad at that fight, to be perfectly honest. An important thing that you want to do when you're playing this game is whenever you get souls, so I just got 9,000 for killing the boss, you almost always want to spend them on something. When you're running around with souls, dying becomes very spooky. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to... I don't know what I would necessarily do with this character. Let's just pretend that I want some dexterity, because that's probably a very safe bet. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put as many points as I can in dexterity. And now if I die, instead of losing 9,000 souls, I lose 1,000. Okay. So that was the first boss, and we can go ahead and enter Stormveil Castle. Generally speaking, you don't want to go straight to Stormveil Castle. You want to spend a lot of time in Limgrave, and you actually want to go south to the Weeping Peninsula. And it's usually a good idea to explore around there before you want to continue in and do Stormveil Castle, but you can also just go straight there. One of the really cool things about this game is it's really big and you have a lot of freedom. So if you want to do things in a weird order, you can. If you don't, that's okay too. I've been your commentator for GameBase, and I hope this was a helpful video, and I hope it gave you a decent idea of what Elden Ring is about and what you can do in the game. Have a great day.